Hi everyone, this is Allison from Allykatkreations. How are you? Please like, subscribe, and share because it's caring. And if you get anything from my work, a connected on an epiphany, a mind-blown moment, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work, and all the links are at the bottom of this video. I'm going to do a book review of Transylvania Sunrise by Radu Cinamar with Peter Moon. Because I'm not giving all these tidbits away, but for those people who do research, there's some goodies for you. I'm going to help you. This story, this book, has been mentioned by Carrie Cassidy a lot. And for me, books come into my purview when it is divine timing. This is divine timing. This takes place in Romania, not necessarily Transylvania, but it takes place in Transylvania in the 60s when there was a dictatorship there. And there was a department that we all need to look into, is Department 0. Within this department, there was a child that was born with an irregular umbilical cord that they couldn't cut. And that brought in the higher officials, and they watched this child, knowing that there was something different about this child. This child had amazing gifts and abilities like many of us. And they used him and eventually took him to a secret base where they were doing kind of like the Super Soldier Project, very similar kind of things where they were building up psionic abilities, where they were building up their intuitive abilities. Thankfully, it didn't take the stretch of imagination of SSP, not to say that's an imaginative thing, but this person, again, I want you guys to read the book, so I'm not giving all the juicy tidbits away. This child is something very special. And they go into all the phases of this child growing up with the different stages of the things that he was exhibiting that people are like, what the fuck? Where normal people like me and others that see things beyond the veil, that have experienced things that we can't quite put words to from our earlier ages, I know many of us have had guardians and angelics and other entities kind of shielding us, kind of making, like putting a cloak of invisibility around us because they didn't want us to be found. For instance, I had done 23andMe and Ancestry.com because I needed to find my birth family. I'm adopted. My adoption was closed. Unless you're really wealthy, it's very hard to get your records. To this day, even now, I know both my birth parents and families. I am still having a very hard time obtaining my original, very first birth certificate. Still don't have it. They gave me the one that I was born with, that I was adopted with. Though my file is with the FBI because my adoption agency was taken out. Back to the book, though. his abilities were not shielded. He wasn't cloaked. He was used by the government. And thankfully, he was very heavily protected because the good elements within that base and within that department, Zero, protected this child in a good way. Gets older, things transpire, and here enters our fun friends, the Masons, and the Bilderberg group. And this is a part of the book, it's further in, midway, where if we would have read this book when it first was published, many of us would be so further along awake than we are now when it comes to the secret societies and the power in which these negative polarized morons, and I don't like using words like that, but let's just face it, they're trying to take us out. They've been trying to take us out. They can't fully annihilate all of us because many of us hold the higher frequency encoding in our DNA that opens up what they want. And for this person that is written about in this book, that's one of the very traits this person has, is high frequency. So they go to it's Busegi Mountain, but there's also other spots, and they're not giving you everything because obviously this was written very, very extremely carefully. There's a lot of things that cannot be divulged. And even in the book that comes after it, there's just things that cannot be divulged, but they did have some factoids in here because a lot of people, when I was reading the editor's note in here, what seems to happen, this is stuff that is so sci-fi too hard to believe that you have to take people's words on it, and people usually can't take words on it. But it's interesting when and around the time of this discovery, and I'll get into that, Romania entered NATO. So there's some corresponding things that happened in our public eye that could correspond with this book. They don't tell you why they entered NATO, but they did. So they go into this mountainous range. This child is now an adult, has been only sifted to 2 bases. He gets kind of found out by these little Masonic peoples, especially one from Italy, from the Bilderberg group, who knows that there's something AKA in one of the mountains. Now, this corresponds with why the United States was in Baghdad a very long time ago and trying to take things down. And this is documented by Jason Q. There's relics and things in Baghdad that actually also transpire in Romania. And I have a feeling that it's in multiple spots around the world. It's not just in 2. They go to the mountain and they kind of reach something, and only this person could actually figure out what to do intuitively to get through all these barriers. And they find this humongous discovery. And it takes a long time for them to figure out what goes on. But basically, what's being described in this book sounds very similar to the Alien Gray episode that I did about the Yellow Book, where there's like a book and you open it up and it's like an infinitude of things that can happen. And they're telling you about the history. Now, a very similar component happens in this book, but it's like a holographic touch pad. And you see these in the movies, you see this predictive programming in a lot of ways. And when the author of the Romanian book, Radu Cinamar, goes and he gets invited, he gets secretly in there into this cavern in this great room that looks like Project Looking Glass. Very, very similar to Project Looking Glass, the way it's corresponding. And when he touches his hands, like he could see how humans are hybridized and like hybridized, all kinds of different elements happen. He sees a lot of crazy shit. And this is back in 2003. If these technologies exist, and they do, and I believe that they do, because there's no way we know about Project Looking Glass. This is what they were trying to really hide in Baghdad, because the same thing is in Baghdad. But go figure, I'm going to read the other book and see if they breached to Baghdad. But there's, after this big projection kind of room, there's 3 tunnels that lead to, one is inner Earth, one is to Tibet and Mongolia, and the other one is to Baghdad and somewhere else. Or they... Now, what's interesting is when I had a very vivid dream, I don't believe I was dreaming. I believe I was out of my body and remembering this. If they wanted me to remember this, I was going through a tunnel close to Russia. There is a story about a mountain peak that skiers were disappeared and then they came up butchered. I went through a tunnel near there and I had the frequency key to get into Asgard that is beyond the ice wall, that is on the Nos Confunden map if you are interested in that. But I believe Asgard is a real place because the Norse, where did they get that kind of information from? These things just don't come out of thin air. The same, if you understand a wasp bait, it's the Orion Chiefs. In the Bible, it says the Pleiades, it says Orion. Where did they get these names from? They just didn't make these things up. There's no way they made that up. And how are they going to get the exact translation? Because the Bible was translated from, Latin, Greek, Aramaic, Hebrew. Just theories putting out there. But this book goes into the influence the Masons have. And it kind of shuts down that Masonic fruitarian lover, CF, big time. I know people who are Masons. I don't think they're bad people. I think they're really good people. But at the highest levels of these organizations, and it's not just them, it's multiple organizations, there's a lot of evil. And it happens to understand that in the world now that we are awakening in, there's tunnels. There's tunnel systems all over the place. Now, where are they going? Now, the thing that Carrie Cassidy addresses that still not too many people are addressing is the galactic slave trade. We have our human trafficking that's happening over the border in America to Mexico. And then there's other countries like Haiti and other island nations that, oops, something happened. What happened to all these kids? You're seeing it in Maui right now. Where are they going? Well, not only is the Stargates being fought over, and the wormholes and portals and other systems that lead to other dimensions and worlds, especially inner Earth, which is the closest in vibratory state to ours. That's why some people could see Nessie, they could see Bigfoot. Not everybody could see these things, but some people have these encounters and are able to capture them on camera. The same thing with UFOs. If you have the eyes to see, you're going to see them. If you do not have the eyes to see, you're not going to see them. It's up to your frequency. If you move your frequency up and you start really awakening, you're going to see a hell of a lot more. The technology that is written in this book, the way it's written, and how did the Romanians find out about this thing in the mountain? The Americans and their spy balloons, not balloons, but satellites. Espionage. And how did that happen? Oh, because the Masonic guy in this book, he got his little minions in the Pentagon to give him some secret maps that he got our little friend here to Romania and said, look, you have to join us because you have no other choice. Although you can't outwit somebody who has a brilliant mind like this guy. And he's like, okay, I'll play your game. Instead of getting killed and taken out of his office, he's playing him. And I mean, it's all a game of chess. So he's trying to outwit and outsmart this guy. And he does to an extent. And America's now brought into the story, into the fold. But what's really interesting, it correlates to why a lot of our people were in Baghdad, because they supposedly hit one of the museums and a lot of things were ruined and destroyed. But what was underneath the museum? There's a tunnel, obviously, that's leading to Romania, and that's like a very far distance away. Why? What is in those two places? Romania does have a sphinx, and they talk about the sphinx. It's not the same sphinx in Egypt, but it has similar characteristics. And depending on what side you're looking at it, you kind of make out it looks like a sphinx. There's a lot of speculation on what that is, but they're always saying that there's something in between the paws of the Sphinx. Well, you got the halls of Amenti below the Sphinx. It could be a spaceship, it could be this, it could be that. Whatever it is, there's something to that. There's tunnels within mountains. Now we have to think about Cheyenne Mountain. What is in Cheyenne and Mount Shasta? There's a Stargate in Cheyenne that they use. And it's the exact thing that looks like the SG Stargate one. And I've showed that in, I think, the World of Warcraft video that I did. But people that go to Mount Shasta have a lot of claims, the same as the claims that they had in Busegi Mountain. And I'm sure there's other mountain ranges around the world that have a very similar, people disappear out of nowhere, they're just not found anymore. And it's not because they were eaten by a bear or a mountain lion, they're gone, no trace of them. And that's kind of hard to believe because we can drop our DNA, hair, bleed, teeth, whatever have you, things happen and you could be found somehow, right? The remnants of you, if you died, could be found somewhere. If these people are going through a portal into another dimension or into inner Earth, they're being taken and not deposited back in third density. Well, now they're disappearing and not coming back. So this book brings up a lot of, this is why I'm like, you got to read this book, because there's a lot of things that could spawn from this book in how we are looking at what we know now in terms of tunnel systems, the Masons and their control over the planet, all their other NGOs and funds who have influence on other countries, governments, and other such. All these institutes that are doing some crazy experiments, right? Who are they being funded by? All those articles that I read about the black holes and quantum and physics alone, who is funding these projects that could steer humanity in the wrong direction? Oh, that's right, the ones that want to take us out. But it begs to differ, what other mountains around the world that have options to go other places? It also comes to mind, where are these tunnels leading? And there's a lot of tunnels supposedly under the ground. We have the reptilian, beautiful tunnels. We have the grays. We have inner earth beings who do use tunnels. We use tunnels. The military uses tunnels. So there's like 1,000,005 tunnel systems. There's tunnels from the Vatican to all over the place. So there is a system that has been slowly coming to surface that people are more aware of now than when this book was written. But when this book was written, it was talking about the 3 avenues of where you can go. They're going to go through more of those in this book. They only got to some of the technology that was in this under the mountain kind of thing. It's like a built-up series. But if we knew about this book in more popularity, I don't know exactly when and how long ago Carrie Cassidy spoke about this book, but she's on it. She's always been on it. Why isn't more people reading this book? Just to start, and then the other books that he's written. And Peter Moon is somebody who's been a part of the Montauk Project, which is another facet to this whole plethora of craziness. We're talking about mind control. We're talking about the Tower of Babel. And synchronistically, Jason's been talking that on that topic on We Not Me. I gave him this book for his birthday. I actually tabbed out all the pages that he needs to read first. He doesn't need to read the story. I mean, I want him to read the whole thing, but get the points of what needs to be read. Because the tunnel, they have little drawings in here with the structure that's inside the mountain, what they're thinking about in the mountain. The Babel, again, I have to be very careful because this is copywritten and very covered, like a lot of the other books that I read. Though I would hope that the authors and the people understand I'm trying to promote their books so they have more sales. So, but it opens up, this book opens up the bigger dialogue about what other places around the world have these portals and these tunnels and these gateways and this ancient technology. Who else what other points around the world have them? I was kind of interested if it was going to Antarctica or the Arctic Sea. I was curious about that. but we didn't end up there. We ended up in inner earth. We're ending up in Baghdad. And now that begs to differ what's underground. What tunnel system is there? Because you have the Kandahar giant in that region. You have the jinn that is active, heavily active in that region. You have all these ancient structures that was, unfortunately, our soldiers had to go in there. But why? Okay, because the Pentagon knew there was something there. They knew there was something in Romania, but it they didn't have the grasp like they had in Baghdad. They had Baghdad sold. There's a lot of things that look psyoptic, but aren't psyoptic. But there's other reasons why they were there. And it was for other antiquities, but it was for that tunnel. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. And it's in that time range. Because when they activated what was in Busegi, it activated Baghdad. The Americans knew about Baghdad. They had intel about what was in the mountain. So this book is leading in a very interesting direction. It's an incredibly smooth, easy, I could not put this book down book. It read really nice. It's easy to understand. There's no getting lost in quantum physics and crazy concepts. It's given it to you straight. Very straight. And it's just a bouncing point off of what else is around the world and what is in those tunnels and how many tunnel systems. And it just opens up this envelope of a larger question, which a lot of people are researching into. But I don't know how many people are researching this book to go further on in exploration. It's vital. Because how many civilizations have some crazy structure? What could be underneath those crazy structures? We have a lot of mountains in this world. A lot of pyramids that are hiding under vegetation, hiding in the jungle, hiding in the crazy Amazon, where you will be killed and eaten alive by those tribes that you just can't mess with. Because they will kill you and eat you. Because that's what they do. They're still living back when. But that's the experience that they chose. But a lot of places around the world have been not necessarily explored. And a lot of places we can't explore because we're not allowed to go there. But if there's a system, let's say in Mount Shasta, I'm curious if there's anybody with the frequency key that can open up other avenues in those tunnels to open up in other places around the world, or how about outside of the firmament? Very deep, unanswerable at this moment in time questions, but it starts a conversation. It starts more and heavier research. You know, the things that they have done to all of us. And a lot of this stuff will be held back from our knowledge because why? Oh, that's not far, that's far-fetched, and it sounds crazy. I think the populace is at the point where, oh my goodness, the conspiracy theorists, they're right. But when it comes to otherworldly things, when it comes to things that you can't see yet still exist, metaphysical, when it comes to tangible evidence of things. And also the fact of the matter is, in the book, it does tell you that there were deaths because of the force field that was around this object that was in the mountain. So people did die because they didn't know what to do, how to get this shield down to get into this middle place where all this technology is at. And I bet you the same thing happened in Baghdad and other places around the world that we don't know about. It's messed up. And so a lot of these things are actually for our protection, but at the same time should be disclosed. We really need to know. There are people who stumble upon things by accident, and people don't believe them, and it shatters people. We got to stop this nonsense. So if you're interested in finding out what's in Busegi Mountain, buy this book. This is the next one, Transylvanian Moonrise, that comes after it. I just started it. It's fantastic. And then I got, this is the third tunnel. I have to get the other two. But it opens up more of a discovery of thought. It opens up more discovery on other places and other mountains and other tunnel systems and other types of technology that they're hiding from us. Supposedly this holographic display that they discovered is showing you human history. Human, not alien. This is like the big thing that a lot of people aren't really delineating when understanding the books that are behind me. A lot of the books that I read are of alien history, how the aliens seeded here, not how we got here. And there is a huge difference. Shiana Dean goes into it in the Voyages books. I highly suggest reading her books because she gives credence to Carrie Cassidy as well. And she talks about her interviews. I saw a video today. One of the channels, I think, had to take all of her work down. I am devastated because I used to listen to that on loops. I like listening to her because of her frequency. But she gives Carrie Cassidy credence and like credit. Like, yeah, when I did the Project Camelot interview, I don't agree with everything that Carrie says, and especially that some of the people she aligns herself with. Not her whistleblowers whatsoever. It's steering a narrative. But looking past that narrative, because it's in one spot and I know which one it is, her other work is fantastic. And again, I don't listen to everything she talks about because of that narrative steering, but for her to get some insight on things and go within with it, I get why she has to do what she does. But she's the one that introduced this book. It's insane. And this is the things that we really need to understand moving forward, is how the complexity of all this affects us. It does, because everybody's like, well, there's medbed technology. Well, here's a problem with the medbed stuff. Like I keep saying, it's infiltrated. If anything could be quantum entangled, you have to really go within to know if that machine is infiltrated and the person running the frequency knows what they're doing, and if they're there for your best and highest good. They're playing with time. We're being bounced like a ping pong ball. They have these technologies because they're experimenting again with stuff that us, aka humanity, never consented for them to do. And not to say that these guys are malicious running these experiments. They're not. They're decent, smart human beings, but they don't know the repercussions of their actions because they're not looking on a spiritual basis. They're only looking at science. Oh, what advancements can we be making? Well, who's paying you? That starts a very big conversation. There's still a lot of articles about the black holes. There's still a lot of articles about crazy shit that when experiments happen and there's discovery, great, but there's no repercussions for these people if they zip us into a black hole, which is what they want. They want us to have our quanta sucked from us and go back like they will to space dust and have their return to source that way. So I'm hoping if we find these passages more readily around the world, and we are able to get our frequency to the point match, the frequency key to open up these doorways and portals, these stargates, even if they're little turnstile ones where it's just going to another town or another country, we can escape. And again, we don't know why these tunnels were made in the original first place. We don't know what the ancients were doing with these tunnels, with these passageways, with this information and technology. We found it. What are we going to do with it now? And obviously, if it wasn't for whistleblowers like Cinamar, we would not know what was in Romania. We would not know. We know some stuff about Baghdad, but we don't know. There's probably under that museum that was, there's probably one of these. The same thing that's in Busegi is in Baghdad. Why? Where does that one lead? We don't know. That's why this book is important, because it's leading us in other thinking directions. It's having us open up more research avenues to take. We got to take them. We got to get on it, because why not? So there's a lot of good diagrams in this book. There's a lot of descriptions in here. Buy it. It's worth every penny. It is on the expensive side, depending what site you get it from, but it is worth it. All the other books, I'm sure, are going to be just as good, but I wanted to get this out because I wanted everybody to start getting their thinking caps on, who do the research, and look up the technologies that are in Busegi and in Baghdad. There's tunnels that link to both of them. When they activated the one in Romania, Baghdad up. And the United States is in on it. So the Pentagon has espionage satellites that read certain things. They have technologies that blasted through this mountain. There's a lot more being hidden from us than we think. And now we need to explore more, deeper, and harder to understand why. And the bigger question is, who is now in control of these sites, this technology, and are we ever going to see it in our lifetime? Are we going to be told the truth about our origins? And again, it's a holographic device that they were playing with. We don't know what faction made that telegram. And again, we have to trust that it's good. Maybe not. I don't know. It's just a question. But even if you read this as fiction, it is really good. So buy the book. Do some research. I hope that my buddy reads it. It's a good birthday present. Especially talking about Babel, and there's a Babel in there. And I just wanted to make a video just to go and get somebody's mind ticking, because I know there's a lot of people that watch me who are into the research, who are into these esoteric kind of things, outside of the box thinking. What do you know about Baghdad besides what the common public that does research know? Is there anybody out there that read these books? Let me know. I'm very curious to know what you think. If you've read this book, I'm reading The Moonrise. I just started it, so I didn't get that far in. I had to go to storage today because I had to get a table and some stuff. So I've been busy in my art section figuring out layouts and stuff. But yeah, I wanted to do a short little video, talk about this Transylvanian Sunrise. And if you know anything about Baghdad, if you know anything about the tunnels that are from Busegi, if you've been there personally, write in the comments, email me. I would love to chit chat with you over that. So I hope I don't get yanked or yelled at for trying to spread some knowledge and didn't give too much away. I don't like to tease or spoil books or movies or anything for that matter. I didn't give much away. Very interesting story. It's a very interesting workup. And I can't wait to read this one. That's creepy. So guys, sending each and every one of you love and light, protection and shielding. Please have a wonderful weekend. Be safe, be seen. Make sure that you're aware the weather is going wonky again. So please take measures and make sure you're settled and everything is good. And until next time, guys.